All right, good morning everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Historically, I find Thursday is the sleepiest day of the week because people have been in school for 4 days already and it's still not Friday. So, yeah, is that accurate? Not accurate? You're good? Thursdays, you're still going strong? Good for you. Daniel? Not so much. Adel? No, so much. Okay. Well, fortunately, tomorrow is Friday, and then we can take a little break. And we have a long weekend coming up. Not this weekend, but next weekend, I think. The Monday is the holiday. Let me just look at my calendar here. The 15th, Monday the 15th is a holiday. So not this weekend, but next weekend we will get a long weekend. We'll get 3 days. So that'll be nice. Okay, let's see who's here online. So Sarah's here. Good morning. Whoops. Good morning, Sarah. And Ryan is here. Good morning to you. And Shania's here. Good morning, Shania. Abby's here. Good morning, Abby. Nicole is here. Good morning, Nicole. And Simrat is here. Hello, Simrat. And Tushin Sana is here. Good morning to you. Okay, so yesterday we're talking about oppression and power, and we were trying to figure out this issue of privilege, right? And I think we had kind of arrived at the point of saying that privilege had to do with kind of these advantages or opportunities or kind of access to resources or something that some people had that others didn't, right? Based on the social group they belong to. And how did we kind of see this? Good morning. How did we see this privilege kind of expressing itself? What are some of the examples that that either Peggy McIntosh gave or some of the examples that you can just think of? Good morning. Examples of privilege. Good morning. Examples of privilege. So white people's names are more valued than black people's names. Yes and no. Can you give me a little more?
When applying for a job, they refer more to white names than black names.
Right. So in that study we read with the resumes and the people with the stereotypically white-sounding names getting called back more, Black Americans were discriminated against based on hiring, right? So one aspect of privilege, I guess in this case, is that white people don't have to worry about getting a job or not getting a job based on their race, right? If I apply for a job here in Canada, I'm usually pretty certain that my race is not going to be a factor, right? They're going to look at my credentials and experience and how I interview, and that race is not going to be an issue for me. If I was an Indian man, if I was a South Asian man, and I went in to go for a job, I would hope that they would just look at my credentials and my experience and how I interviewed. Legally speaking, they are not allowed to discriminate against me based on my race or ethnicity or ancestry. But I might never know for sure. Right? Nobody's going to come out and say, we're not hiring you because you're Indian, right? Nobody's going to say that. So I'll never really know for sure. But if I don't get the job, there might be this question of, I wonder, right? I felt I interviewed well. I think my credentials and my experience are solid. Didn't get the job. Maybe they just found someone, maybe they had someone better, right? Or was race a factor? You never really know in some cases. And so often one aspect of privilege is that people who have it don't have to worry about these kinds of things, right? They don't have to worry that their race or ethnicity or gender or sexuality or citizenship status or religion, they don't have to worry that those things might count against them, right? Whereas people in minoritized groups, sometimes they do, right? Sometimes it's always a thought in the back of their head, am I going to be treated fairly here, right? Am I going to be seen as a just a candidate for this job, or is my race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, age, religion, are these things going to interfere with that? Even though they shouldn't, and even though legally they're not allowed to, it can still happen, right? So yeah, that's one aspect. What's another aspect of privilege that Peggy mentions? No, I'm saying open your laptop and look. This is a laptop that's closed, and then I'm going whoop. I'm awesome at charades. What else? What other things? Online people, you can chime in here too. I'll take answers online. How does privilege work? How does it advantage one group, and how does it disadvantage another group?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, always.
What would the opposite of this situation? Like, if the white person wants to get the job from the black person.
Good, perfect, good question. Not entirely what we're talking about, but that's okay. Good question. So the question is that, you know, we're talking about discrimination in hiring, and we're saying that people with black-sounding names in the U.S. may be discriminated against in hiring. And so Daniel's question is, well, what happens if it's the other way around? What if you have a company who's owned by, it has a black owner, and then a white person comes and applies for the job? Might there be discrimination there? And yeah, there very well might be. The trick here is that the situation is slightly different, okay? And so this is the thing, is that let's use gender for an example. So can men be sexist towards women? Yes, they can. Can men discriminate against women? Yes, they can. Can women discriminate against men? Yes, they can. They can. Can women hold prejudicial ideas about men? Absolutely. But where it becomes different is that the sort of societal context that you exist in, right? So if you exist in a society where men have power and men are the dominant group and they are in an oppressive relationship with women, then the discrimination is slightly different, right? Because those instances of kind of individual discrimination are backed up by this larger societal pattern. And so the effects of it become worse. And so you can, if I'm an owner of an Indian restaurant and I'm an Indian man, I can decide that, well, I'm just going to have Indian people working in my restaurant. I think that would be more authentic. I think that will help the feel. That's what I would prefer. I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to hire Indians in my Indian restaurant. But am I allowed to do that legally? No, I'm not allowed to discriminate. Might I anyway? I might, right? But again, it's a little bit different because white people are not in an oppressive relationship with Indians in Canada, right? White people are the dominant group, and so it's the dynamics of it and kind of the power situation is a little bit different. And so this kind of leads into the idea of like, oh, people can be racist, but can you be is there reverse racism? And there isn't, because racism describes a societal dynamic, a society-wide dynamic in which one group has power and the other group doesn't, right? And so, either group can discriminate both ways, but the context, the societal context is important, right? And so, can I go and apply for a job and if a woman is in charge of the company, or if the woman is in charge of hiring, or a woman is in charge of hiring, and she doesn't hire me because I'm a man, she's not legally allowed to do that, and it would be wrong of her to do so. But Is that a general problem that I experience in society every day? No, right? It would be a very isolated incident. And so, yeah, discrimination based on social groups is usually, it's not a good idea, but there's a difference when one group has societal power behind them, when they have social and political and institutional power behind them. So my discrimination of a woman, if I was going to hire someone at my company, is in a way worse than the opposite, if you will, even though neither of them are good. And you don't want to get into like rank ordering which discrimination is worse. You don't want to go there. But the societal context is important. Okay. Other examples of privilege. I had one yesterday that had to do with age privilege, right? I went into 7-Eleven when I was 13, and the shop owner watched me the whole time, right? Because he had a prejudicial idea against teenagers that they steal stuff from convenience stores, right? Is there a grain of truth to that? Yes. Was I going to steal anything? Well, you don't know that, but no, I was not going to steal anything and did not. But I still felt this staring, right? I still felt this scrutiny. Whereas, again, when I walk into a convenience store now, nobody looks at me, right? What else? What about representation in media? Is that part of privilege? Is part of privilege that when I turn on the television or when I select a movie on Netflix, in many cases I'm going to very easily be able to find a movie that stars people that look like me. Well, no, they look way better than me, but people that look like me in general, and telling stories from my kind of cultural context. Can I be comfortable in that? Yeah, it's very easy to go on Netflix and find stories about white people, right? That's very easy, particularly in North American cinema. Now, Netflix is kind of great because they have content from all around the world, and so you can search out films and television shows from different countries, and so it is more diverse than it has been in the past. But if you turned on the television, for instance, does anyone actually watch television, like cable TV? No, that's for old people, right? That's over. I don't have it either. If you switch on regular cable television, you will have a much harder time finding diversity, right? You'll find a lot of stories about white people, white families, white forensic investigators, white FBI agents, whatever. And they'll be telling stories from a white perspective, right? And that's very easy to find. And if you're a white person, you probably don't even notice it. You just turn on the TV and watch it. But if you're a different gender, sexuality, race, religion, you might find it more difficult to find stories that reflect who you are, right? And that has to do, to some degree, with who's in power, right? Other ways privilege affects people. Other ways. Let's see. Well, maybe let's that list. So Peggy, in that article, Peggy had a list of 47 different things that she came up with. Did any of those kind of resonate with you? Did any of them kind of like, oh, that's happened to me, or oh, I've seen that happen, or did any of that seem familiar to you in any way? Do you think I can walk down the street here in Vancouver at any time of the day or night, and do you think I worry about someone attacking me or sexually assaulting me? Well, I mean, I'm pretty good looking, but no, I don't. I do. Sorry, it's an inappropriate joke, but I'm just trying to wake you up here. No, this is not something I worry about, right? I do not have to worry about that. Do women have to worry about that sometimes? Yeah, they do, right? And they should not have to, right? They should be safe. They should not have to worry about this. But the sad reality is that, in fact, they do have to worry about this, right? That's an element of privilege, right? I go pretty much where I want, when I want, and I never have to worry about some creep jumping out of the bushes and trying to have sex with me, right? I do not have to worry about that. But do women have to worry about that? Sometimes they do, right? And again, it's unacceptable, it's not right, it's horrific, but the reality of the situation is that is true. Part of that is male privilege, right? And I don't even have to think about that, right? Because I just walk around and go about my regular life and never worry about, some guy grabbing me on the SkyTrain or from a bush or whatever. I never have to worry about that, but women do, right? That's an aspect of male privilege. What's another one? Do you think when I have kids, do you think I'll have to teach them about racism and how to be careful and that I'll have to teach them that some people will treat them badly just because of the color of their skin? Do you think I'll have to teach them that? I should still teach them about racism, absolutely. But will I have to teach it to them in that way? Will I have to tell them that some people will just not like them because of how they look? No. I will not have to do that. That's part of my white privilege. I don't have to teach my kids that they have to be careful. Some people are going to be racist towards them. I don't have to have that talk with them. I should have a different talk with them, absolutely. But that's not the talk I'm having with them. Do you think black mothers and fathers have to have that talk with their kids? Yeah, they do, right? What else? Do you think if I have a meeting to go to here at the college, which I often do, if I have a meeting to go to and I come in 10 minutes late or 15 minutes late, and so sorry everyone, I'm running a little late, and I come in and I sit down, do you think anyone thinks to themselves, oh, white people? Do you think anyone thinks that? No, right? Nobody holds any aspect of my behavior as racially based, right? I don't have to. Any negative behavior I do is attributed to me, not to my racial background, right? Does that work for minoritized groups? Not necessarily, right? Sometimes if they're late, or if they speak up, or if they don't speak up, or sometimes that will be interpreted as a cultural or racial thing, right? Ugh, women, right? You've heard that before, right? So people judge, in the dominant group, people get judged as individuals. In the minoritized group, people get judged as a member of that group, right? And so when I come in late, people don't go, ugh, white people, or they don't go, ugh, men, right? Although there's a lot of ugh men's that are valid, but that's not one of them. Ugh, men, right? But sometimes, but women will be judged by the group they belong to. Did you hear the comments from the head of the Tokyo Olympics, the 2020 Olympics? Did you hear his comments yesterday? Yeah, he was saying that, I'm not going to quote him directly because I can't remember, so if I mess it up a little bit, forgive me. But he said something to the effect of that, women, we would have gotten this work done. We would have gotten this work done much earlier, but there were women on the committees, and women just talk and talk and talk. It's annoying, and they should know their place. No word of a lie. This is what got said, right? And so Does that ever happen to men? Would he ever say, oh, well, the men wouldn't shut up and that's why we didn't get anything done? Good morning. No, right? And it's not even those women on the committee that talked a lot. It's women in general, right? So again, those women got judged because they belonged to this social group, right? So they didn't get judged as individuals. It was, women, right? Kid you not. He seemed to be a really old guy, so it's a bit of an earlier generation thing, but still unacceptable. Let's see. Do you think I have to worry when I'm pulled over by the police? When I'm driving? No, right? I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry that things are going to go badly. I don't have to worry like George Floyd that somebody's going to kneel on my neck. That's not going to happen, right? I'm going to get a ticket, maybe if I was speeding, not that I speed, but I'm going to get a ticket and I'm going to go on my way, right? I don't fear the police, right? Because I don't have to. Do other people have to fear the police? Unfortunately, in some cases they do, and they shouldn't have to, and it's wrong, and we have issues surrounding that, but I don't fear the police, right? I walk down the street, I see a cop, I don't think anything of it, but that's not the same for people of other races and ethnicities, right? They may have a much different reaction to the police, particularly in the United States where policing is very complicated and there's a lot of issues to do with race and policing and militarization of the police in the United States.
Most of the police are racist.
What's that?
Most of the police are racist.
Well, that's a good question, right? Are most of the police officers racist? This might be an excellent thing to talk about in the race unit because it's a complicated thing and it's got lots of other ideas attached to it, and so it's very tempting to just say yes or to just say no. And certainly the people who represent the police have said no. It's just a few bad apples, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. So I would like to talk about it, but maybe not yet because it's a bigger conversation. Let me just see. Yeah, I think a lot of these things, if you look at them and if you boil them down to the most simple level, you'll see that most of them have to do with I can go places and do things without my social identity, my race, my ethnicity, my gender, my sexuality, without that kind of causing people to treat me differently. And when I kind of look outside at the world, I see other people like me. I see my experience and who I am, my identity. I see that reflected back at me. And again, if you're in a dominant group, that's very easy to achieve, right? It's very easy for me to turn on a movie and find a movie about a cool white guy and then watch it and enjoy it, right? That's very easy for me to do. But if you're, good morning. If you were a lesbian Muslim woman, for example, you might find it very difficult to find, media that reflects even part of that experience, never mind the whole thing, right? So some of it has to do with access to, not having people treat you as the social group you belong to. Part of it has to do with, do I see myself reflected in society? Do I see my experience reflected back? Or do I not see it, right? And maybe third, I guess this is connected to the first one, but when people see me, do they judge me based on the social group I belong to? Or do they judge me as an individual? And again, if you're a member of the dominant group, usually you get judged as an individual. If you're a member of a minoritized group, you get judged as an individual who's a member of that group. Okay? I'm not sure that we have a good grasp of this, but I'm going to keep going and see how it goes. Are those with privilege doing something wrong? Because I will admit, I have a lot of privilege in this country, right? I'm white, I'm a male, I'm kind of a middle-agey kind of person. I'm reasonably well educated. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm an English speaker. I have a Christian background, so even though I'm not strongly religious, I kind of come from that tradition, and Christians are in the dominant group here in Canada. So I'm in a lot of dominant groups. I have a lot of privilege. So how should I feel about that? Nasra, I feel like you have some ideas on this. Do you want to share?
Guilty.
Definitely guilty. But how should I feel about that? Or how should you feel about me based on that knowledge? What's that? Lucky? Yeah, it is. There is some. Well, yeah, that luck is entirely part of it, right? Because all of those social identities that I mentioned, I'm a white, male, Canadian citizen, English speaker, Christian background. Did I choose any of those things? No, right? Those are all just fluke, right? I just happen to be those things, right? I just happen to be born here. My parents happen to be white. My, chromosomes happen to combine in such a way that made me a male person. Yeah, it's a total lottery, right? I just happen to be who I am, right? So luck is part of it, but lucky is also part of it in that I have a lot of advantages, right? I have a lot of advantages in society. I can trust that people are going to treat me generally nicely, if I'm nice to them, and I'm going to get good response, and I'm going to be judged on who I am as a person. I'm not going to be judged as a member of a social group. I don't have to worry about people singling me out or, asking me to speak for white people everywhere or anything like that. I don't have to do any of that stuff, right? So that's lucky too, right? And that has nothing to do with anything that I've done. So a lot of the sort of privilege I have is entirely unearned. Is it not? I haven't earned any of that, right? I just happen to have it. Now I've earned other things, right? Like I have 3 degrees, so I earned those. That's legitimate. But a lot of my other identities that sort of influence my experience of society, I have not earned those. They're just luck, right? I just happen to be that person. So how do I deal with that? How do I feel about that?
I literally can't comprehend what your day-to-day life looks like because we're so different.
You can't comprehend what my day-to-day?
Yeah.
How do you mean?
Because I'm a female.
Yes?
And I'm obviously not white.
Obviously not.
So I'm never just chilling. I'm always like when I'm walking down the street.
Yeah.
Although I know it's not that safe, it's safe. But it's never safe for me, you know what I mean? So I'm always looking behind me.
There's always a little thing running in your mind, right? Okay, so I'd love to hear more about this. But yeah, so Nasra's saying that, she doesn't know what my experience is like because when she walks down the street, there's always a certain amount of her, computer brain cycles that are monitoring the safety of the environment around her, right? And that's something that I don't have to do, at least not to that extent. If I went walking in downtown East Side, that part of my brain would be running, but mostly I don't. Okay, what else? Yeah.
But it's a lot of things, but then I can't point them out because it's a norm for me. So I realize it when you say things and I'm like, oh damn, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I can't relate.
Okay, like what kind of things? I'd love to hear about this. This is great.
Like when I'm walking down the street and there's a group of guys behind me.
Yeah.
I move away so they can go in front of me.
Yeah.
Or literally any male that walks, I'm like, hey.
Yeah.
Or even if it's just a girl, I'm constantly just turning around and holding my purse.
Yep.
And I don't go down alleyways by myself.
Right.
In fact, I like to go everywhere with my sister because I don't know, to be
Two people's better than one. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like, oh, like when I'm like the only the only non-white person, I'm like looked at, like, oh, where are you from? And they try to guess, and I'm like, don't ask me, I don't know you.
Yeah. So and so yeah, there's a couple things there, right? So and actually, I've noticed that too. That women don't like it when I walk behind them, and so actually I try. I actually try not to. So like I try to, like if I wind up, walking behind a woman, I'll either try to pass her really quickly, or I'll just like walk slowly so she can get way ahead of me, because it's I can tell people are uncomfortable, right? And I don't think I'm an intimidating person, but of course they don't know me, so but yeah, that's a factor, right? I don't worry about that unless it's late at night and there's some criminal looking people hanging around. Then I worry, but I don't worry on a day-to-day basis, right? Whereas women do, right? You go places with your sister. You don't walk down alleyways. You make sure your purse is secure, right? People ask you. People are interested in you because you're different, quote unquote, right? Where are you from? Nobody asks me where I'm from, right? But which is interesting, because my family is a much more recent immigrants to Canada than many Japanese and Chinese and South Asian families, and so there are some people who are visible minorities or people of color whose families have been here longer than mine, but nobody asks me where I'm from. They just assume I'm from here, right? Because Canadians are white, which is not true, but that's the stereotype, right? The idea is that Canadians are white, but in reality, Canadians look like all kinds of different people. I wanted to ask you a little bit more, Nasser, but I just wanted to say Canada's a very safe country. You don't really have to worry about people jumping out of the bushes at you. It's it does happen very rarely, but it's a very safe country. So I know we're talking about this, but don't panic.
See, I thought that though, but there was like one time I was at the park.
Yeah.
And it was a public place. Like, there were like people walking their dogs and children, so I assumed safe. I can sit here on the bench, nothing will happen to me.
Right.
And then there was this white dude. He looked old. I don't know if what his vibes were just not. It just not.
You don't know what?
I don't know what he was. Like, I don't know if he was like a stable person. I don't know if he was homeless.
Sure.
I don't know.
Okay.
But he was a white male person.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked in front of me, and I'm at the bench. So to get to where he's going, he just walked straight. But he cut towards me. So obviously I'm like, oh.
So you're sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
He's walking by, and he.
Cut to come towards me.
Okay.
So obviously at that point I'm like, what, And then this white lady, I'm sorry, I'm saying white a lot of things.
No. It's okay. Unfortunately, it is important to the story, right?
So this white lady was going in the stroller with her child, and I looked at her and I see alarm in her face. So that's when I was like, ooh. And I looked at him like she saw him to see me, so she was alarmed. And then once I saw her reaction to him, I looked at him and he quickly just went the other way.
Interesting.
And I was like, okay. She low-key saved my life. She high-key saved my life. I feel like.
Well, clearly you were both. Clearly, your danger sense was, your spider sense was triggered, right? You knew something was wrong, right? Yeah. So again, it's not 100% safe, but it's not it's not. There's not rampant crime out there either. But again, part of my privilege is that maybe I don't see stuff like that, because that stuff doesn't usually happen to me, right? And so I may not see all of the things that are happening, right? There might be racism all over the place happening in Canada, but I might not see it because it's not pointed at me, right? And so as long as somebody doesn't clearly say something racist, I might not see it or know it or feel it, whereas people of color will, right? They'll know when something's happening, right? What else? Anything else that comes to mind right now? Will you tell me if more pops up? Okay. So anyway, let's circle back. Is privilege a good thing? Or can it be a good thing? Or should I feel like a horrible, horrible person and never show my face in public again?
No, I think you should just acknowledge that it exists.
Okay, well, that's a good first step, right? That's a good first step, is that I can acknowledge that it exists. That's helpful, right? Because again, if you cannot fix a problem that you do not acknowledge, right? If you pretend your roof is not leaking, you will never fix the roof. So again, first step is actually acknowledging privilege, and I do. I know that society kind of works this way. I know that people have different experiences, and I know that I do not encounter barriers that other people, in fact, do. Right? Okay, what else? Good thing, bad thing?
Also, you're looking for language. Your first language is English. I remember when I came to Canada, like I couldn't speak English.
Sure.
Even one word. And everyone treated me very racistly
Mm.
in the airport. Then I wanted to get my study permit. That was the worst moment in my life.
Oh my God, what happened?
That officer was so racist. He said, "What are you doing, man? Say something like this." I said, I can't. I don't speak English in Iran, you know."
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that's unfortunate. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that was your first your first experience of Canada.
My first thing in Canada.
If it makes you feel even a little bit better, most of the people who work at airport and customs and that, they're not that friendly anyway. I don't even like talking to them, but clearly you had a very different experience. So I'm sorry that was yeah. When you go to Hawaii, they put a thing of flowers around your neck and say, aloha, welcome to Hawaii, and here you get this jerk, right? So I'm sorry that happened. Yeah. So, but that's a factor too, right? Because people who don't speak English or don't speak English well, they can suffer discrimination. They can suffer discrimination also, right? People think they're stupid, or maybe they don't want to speak English, or somehow they're backwards or whatever. And of course,
Or you speak English and they're impressed.
or they what?
Because when I speak English, like, oh, you speak really good English.
Oh.
Duh, like, what do you mean?
Yeah, right. So, oh, you speak really good English, right? The assumption that English is not your first language. Is English your first language or no?
Well, it is now, I guess.
Yeah, but
Like Arabic and Swahili.
oh, okay. So did you speak Arabic at home or Swahili or both? Both. Cool. And now. So how fluent are you in the other two?
Well, Arabic I kind of lost touch, but I fully understand. It's just I'm not confident speaking.
Right.
But with Swahili and English, I'm fluent.
That's very cool. That's very cool. But yeah, the sort of, and we'll get to this. That's actually a microaggression, which we'll get to in a minute. But that's a little microaggression. Oh, you speak English so well, as if somehow, Nasra's ability to speak English would be compromised by the color of her skin, which is completely ridiculous, right? There's no, yeah. So but again, there's that implied idea that, oh, what a challenge for you to master to speak English. It must have been so difficult for you, right? And nobody compliments me on my English ability. I think it's pretty good. But I think I'd like somebody to do that. But no, but it's true, right? But again, should I feel bad? Am I bad? No? Okay, so that's good. So I'm not doing anything wrong. I have privilege, and in this society, I have quite a bit of it. So you're saying it would be good for me to acknowledge that and to understand it, which I definitely acknowledge it, and I think I understand it, although I continue to learn, and so I'm not there yet. Can it be a good thing in another way? Huh? Well, yeah, it definitely benefits. It definitely benefits me, right? So, I mean, but the problem is that it benefits me at the expense of others, right? So I can, in one way, I can kind of feel good about the benefit, but in the other way, I can't, because I know that other people are being disadvantaged as a result, right?
Well, at least you have more power to like express it. Like if you are not uncomfortable with someone like don't have the privileges as you,
Mhm.
then you have a louder voice than the person.
I do have a louder voice, don't I?
Not like this in the society.
In the
You
soc-
express your comment.
Right. So what should I say with that loud voice?
Give that person his privilege and his rights.
Right. So that, and yeah, that's a nice one. That's exactly true, right? I have privilege, right? When I open my mouth as a white male, people listen to me. Now, I'm not saying that they always should or that you should always listen to white males, but they tend to have a louder voice. They tend to feel more comfortable speaking up, and people tend to listen to them more often. So it matters what comes out of my mouth, right? And what can I do? Well, I can actually make space for minoritized people, right? I can say that, yes, racism is a problem in Canada. Sexism is a problem in Canada, right? There is religious oppression in Canada, which we'll get to. These are clear, real, significant, ongoing problems, and they need to be rectified if we want to have the fair, multicultural, equal society that Canada advertises itself to be, right? If we want to be that, we have to fix these things. And I can say that, right? Because, again, I have privilege. I have a loud enough voice for people to listen to me. And, shoot, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I can make space for those people, and and the other thing is that I can acknowledge those things because it doesn't benefit me, right? Sometimes when people speak up, so let's just use an example of people of color speaking out against racism. There's always some kind of the underlying criticism that, oh, well, they just want special rights, right? Or they just want to be treated specially, or they just want more than the rest of us, right? And again, that's not true in any way, but that's kind of an idea, right? And so when someone who is disadvantaged speaks up, there's always the criticism of, oh, they just want a free ride. They just, they don't want to have to work as hard as the rest of us to do, to achieve things or whatever, right? There's that kind of idea. And again, if I say it, that argument doesn't work, right? I'm not looking for any special rights. I'm saying that these people deserve equal treatment and they're not getting it, and that needs to be fixed. So I don't have, you can't accuse me of having any ulterior motive here, right? So I can speak out against racism or sexism or religious oppression or whatever. I can speak out against it because people actually listen to me, and because I won't be suspected of having that ulterior motive, right? I won't be accused of wanting special treatment or special rights or whatever. So, yeah, privilege can be used, right? I can use it as a tool and, allow a conversation to take place by actually talking about it, right? And to some degree, that's what we're doing in here, right? We are creating some space to talk about these issues. The other thing we should point out is that if you go through that list of privileges that Peggy sort of brainstormed, some of them are good and some of them are bad, right? So when Peggy says, I can feel comfortable that if I move into a neighborhood that my neighbors will be nice to me, right? That's a privilege that we want everyone to have. That's a good one, right? We want people to be able to move in and neighbors to be nice to them, right? If they go into a store, they will be treated, with kindness by the staff, right? Do we want that for everyone? Yeah, we do want that for everyone. So some of those privileges are good and need to be extended to everyone, but some of them are bad because they allow some people advantages and other people are disadvantaged. And those are the ones we don't want, right? The judgments based on social groups and the kind of lack of diversity, the lack of reflection of experience in society. We don't really want that either, right? So again, some of those privileges are good. We want to extend them to everybody or make sure that they're extended to everyone. Some of them need to be fixed, right? They need to go away. I would love it if everyone was treated in society the same way as I am. That's what I want, right? I don't want to be unfairly advantaged, but I would like everyone to be able to, you know, have a fair experience in society, which I feel that I have. What else should we say? Anything else about privilege? I'll summarize it after our break, but how does that sit so far? Mulder, you have a slightly thoughtful or confused look on your face. I'm not sure.
Confused.
Okay, what are you confused about?
I don't know how to explain it. I'm not really relating to what you're saying.
You what?
I'm not relating to what you're saying.
Right. Okay, can you give me a little bit more and maybe I can help you? You're not relating.
It's hard to imagine what you're saying
Yes, it is.
because I've not had those problems.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is the case, and I can't, it's difficult because of course all of you are from different countries, right? You have different kind of genetic ancestry or race or ethnicity or however you want to describe it. And you come from different countries, and you come from different countries in which you may or may not be in the dominant group, right? And so if you come from a country where you are in the dominant group, you may have a difficult time imagining some of these things. And Canadians can have a difficult time imagining it too if they are white, and particularly if they're white males. Where I started learning about all this was a class I took in university. So when I was doing my teacher training a number of years ago, one of the classes that we had to take was, I think it was called Aboriginal Education or something like that. I forget what the name of the course was. Had to take it, so we took it. And basically what it was a little bit of teaching theory, so how to teach in an Indigenous kind of way. But a lot of it also had to do with Indigenous history within Canada. And if you know anything about that, you'll know that Indigenous people have been treated incredibly poorly by the Canadian government and by the Canadian population for a few hundred years now, right? It's an open wound in Canada's history, and that relationship is still not repaired yet. So we had this course, we learned about all these things, and we were being taught by Indigenous professors. Most of the people in the class were not Indigenous people. And so in the process of learning all this stuff, a lot of people had trouble with it. And probably to sum it up, they could not relate, right? And so what the feelings they were having is things like, you know, I don't like what I'm hearing, I don't like this class, I disagree with what you're saying, I feel like you're making me the bad guy and I don't feel like I am the bad guy, I feel guilty and horrible now, and why do I feel that way? What are we even doing this for? There was all these kind of confused, defensive reactions, and part of that is part of those reactions are natural because you're kind of finding your way into a bigger understanding. And it's an understanding that a lot of people who belong to dominant groups can't see. And this is where we go back to the positionality thing, right? Where in society you stand depends on what you see. And so for us, for a bunch of white students in an Indigenous class, we were like, oh, I never saw things from this perspective before. I didn't know it was this bad. And now you're kind of, in a way, you're implying that I'm not innocent here, right? I'm in some ways guilty. I'm a part of this process. And so, yeah, a lot of people initially didn't relate, were confused, were upset, were angry. And I will admit, going through the course, I was a little confused as well. I was like, what is going on in this class? What is this for? I don't get it. Why are we why are we talking about this stuff? I don't know what I'm supposed to do or take from this. And it actually took a long time to come to terms with what I was really supposed to understand. And in fact, I didn't fully understand it by the end of the course, which my final paper reflected, but it was that which was okay. It took longer for me to figure it out, right? And again, part of it is, part of my understanding of that class was not necessarily that I had to feel guilty, but it was that I had to understand that, I am, by luck, I am part of a societal system in which I'm advantaged and Indigenous people have been disadvantaged, right? I have profited from their mistreatment, right? And it wasn't my fault because I wasn't here. I didn't do it. Even my ancestors weren't really here until very recently. So it's really not my fault, right? I did not do this. But I am now part of a machine in which I have unfair advantages, right? And so I don't have to feel necessarily guilty about that because, as we suggested, it's just dumb luck. I am who I am, right? It was, I had no choice in the matter of how I was born. But I do have a choice in terms of how I feel about things now and what I do and what I say, right? And so what I'm saying is that, yeah, we have an unfair system and that needs to be rectified. It is not right that Indigenous people are less well off than the rest of us simply because they are Indigenous people, right? That is wrong, and Canada as a whole cannot benefit from their mistreatment, right? And so, but, and it sounds simple to say it now, but it took a long time to figure it out, to actually figure it out. And so, part of, and I don't know if this is helping, Mulder, you can let me know if it is or not, but sometimes part of the difficulty is that if you do belong to dominant groups within the country, your country of origin, it is harder to see, right? And it might be even harder to see because a lot of the examples that are coming through this and the way I'm talking about it is from a North American context, a North American perspective. And part of the reason for that is that I cannot talk about this from a Kenyan perspective or an Iranian perspective or a Vietnamese perspective. I can't do it because I don't know, right? I don't know the culture, I don't know the country. I can't give you examples in that way. So there might be a little bit of a disconnect there too, and so I'm hoping that if I explain it well enough, you will see some of these things in your own country and in your own experience, because I don't have the knowledge to sort of point them out to you in that way. That's what I'm hoping anyway. Does any of that help? Yeah? Okay. Okay, do you want to take a little break then? A little break? Okay. Take a break, come back, I'll summarize privilege, and then I think we'll talk about ableism. Yeah. Okay, welcome back, people. So, as a quick kind of review, just to make sure we get this privilege thing down, because it's a tricky concept. So, privilege is something that operates on all kinds of different levels, right? So, within culture, within society, it is present in interpersonal reactions, but it's also present at a societal level, okay? So, at a high level. And again, it gives advantages or favors or benefits or opportunities or resources to one group at the expense of another group, right? And so, again, it can be based on race or gender or sexuality or ability or religion or any combination of those
I
things.
have a question.
Absolutely.
Is there a privilege where it doesn't cost anything? Like you get a privilege and it doesn't force the other group to be at a disadvantage?
Oh. Well, I think in the way that we're talking about it here, what makes it a privilege is that it is not extended to all people equally. So it's not a question of cost, and it's not a question of, you know, the only reason that I have something is because they don't necessarily. So it doesn't always work that way. But it does kind of describe a state in which some people have benefits and others don't. And in some cases it's because, you know, these people have it because these people don't, and in some cases it's just, you know, it doesn't kind of balance out that way mathematically, if you will. Right, but I do say at the expense of members of the minoritized group, but sometimes it's not quite that way. A couple of aspects of privilege that sort of came up in that article, but maybe I'll just clarify here, are the following, okay? So these are kind of external structural dimensions of privilege. And so the first one is that there's the integration of dominant group norms into the structures of society. What does that mean? Well, that means that society is kind of constructed in such a way, it's built in such a way that benefits the dominant group, okay? So the example I like to use for this that really works for me is that you all came to school this morning, not online people, but go with me on this, online people. You all came to school this morning, right? And you probably, you know, left your house or apartment or wherever you're staying. You probably walked a little bit. Maybe you got on a bus. Maybe you got on a SkyTrain. Maybe you got on another bus after that, who knows? You walked here and you came into the college, you came upstairs and you showed up here. Yes? Now, on that entire trip, you probably you probably experienced no barriers to your mobility, right? You probably had your earphones in, you're probably listening to music or a podcast, and you were on your phone and you were thinking about whatever you were thinking about, and you didn't think about anything, right? But someone who has a disability, someone who has a mobility challenge, they're going to encounter all kinds of barriers, right? They're going to have all kinds of things, right? You probably just hopped out of bed and got dressed, right? Or hopped out of bed and had a shower and got dressed. Or if you're a woman, hopped out of bed and did a whole bunch of things before you left the house, because women tend to put more emphasis on their appearance, and so it takes longer. But anyway, you did that without thinking about anything, right? You can all dress yourselves, can you not? Yeah, some people can't do that on their own, right? Some people have a disability and they can't do it. You hopped on a bus, right? But hopping on a bus is not that easy if you're in a wheelchair, right? You all walked here, right? But again, you walked, you hopped up curbs, maybe you crossed in the middle of the street, which you shouldn't do because it's dangerous, but you might have done it anyway. Again, some people with disabilities can't do that, right? You may have opened your front door to leave, right? And then locked it with your key. But if you have problems with the mobility of your hands, you can't do that, right? You can't lock the door with your key. And in some cases, you can't even open the door. Maybe you can't grab the doorknob. You'll see here in Vancouver that the building code requires these types of door handles. Yeah, the round doorknob is difficult to turn, right? But these ones can be opened just by kind of pushing them down. So the building code requires these. But you came up the stairs here, and I know we do have an elevator, but you came up the stairs and you probably didn't think anything of it, or you probably thought, oh, stairs. But you can still walk up them, right? So there's all kinds of little barriers to getting here in the morning that you did not notice. You didn't even notice they were there. And why not? Well, because society is built for able-bodied people, right? They are built for people who are normal, quote unquote, in terms of their mobility, right? Most of our world is designed for people who can walk. Most of our world is designed for people who can hear and who can see, right? And if you don't have one of those abilities, then you've got challenges, right? You have things, barriers you have to overcome. The second one is construction of what's normal and not normal by the dominant group. So dominant groups kind of get to say what the normal state of things is. They get to say how things go. What's a good example of this? Maybe I'll come back to it. I'm having a difficult time coming up with something on the spot. Third one is invisibility of privilege for the dominant group. So again, often, because dominant groups don't experience discrimination or prejudice pointed at them, sometimes it's easy for them to feel like it doesn't exist. It feels invisible. And maybe, Mulder, I might be wrong here, but maybe that was part of your confusion as well, is that sometimes you don't know when it's happening, right? So we said that for me, I'm a white male Canadian in Canadian society, and that puts me in a privileged position. Do you think I know when that has worked for me specifically? No. I don't know, right? So I got a job here, and I've been teaching here for 5.5 years now. Did I get the job because I was white? I don't think so. They didn't say so. Our HR manager did not tell me that. Did I get the job because I was a man? I don't think so. Our HR manager didn't tell me that either. Did I get the job because of my credentials, because of my degrees? In part, yes. Did I get the job because of my sort of personal characteristics? Yeah, I did interview for the job, and actually I had to do a 10 or 15 minute lesson. So I had to sort of teach for 15 minutes. They had to see me do it. So did I get the job because of that? Probably. Did it help that I was a white male?
No.
I don't know. I don't know. This is the problem. It certainly didn't work against me, right? It wasn't holding me back. Did it help me? Probably not, right? We have a pretty diverse collection of instructors here, I think, but this is the tricky part about privilege, and the invisibility part is that sometimes you don't know when it's happening, especially when you're in the dominant group. You can't feel it working for you, and so it's easy to feel that it's just not there, okay? In terms of privilege for more internal effects, privilege, in many cases, people in dominant groups feel that their group have a right to their position on top, right? Is there any reason why the President of the United States must be a man all the time? No, but people seem to be very comfortable with this idea, and most men are very comfortable with the idea that it's always a man. Women, I'm not sure, they might feel differently, but most men would feel that, it's perfectly logical for a man to be President of the United States, right? Because they feel they have a right to their position. They feel that men are the toughest, smartest, most logical, most kind of, good under pressure kind of thing, and they should be in that role. And of course, whether those things are true or not is a completely different story, but they justify their position at the top, right? They feel that that's normal, that's natural, that's how things should be. many times in terms of privilege, dominant groups have internalized messages of their group's superiority. Do you think there are lots of men out there that think that men are better than women? No? Maybe? Yes? Yeah, I think there are, unfortunately. But in part, that's because that's the social messaging that's circulating, right? Is that men are, all the things that we desire, sort of confidence and independence and toughness and logic and, all those things are male things, right? We value all those things and then we attach them to male stereotypes and male gender norms. And so women are seen as less, right? They're too emotional, they're too soft, they're too illogical, right? And again, imagine another universe, if you believe in multiverses. Imagine a universe where same Earth, but instead of prizing those things, what if we prized empathy and compassion and social connection and warmth, right? What if those were the things that we really respected, women would be in the dominant group, because that's often how women tend to be. I'm stereotyping a little bit here, but just go with me. So yeah, imagine a world where those are the values that we held, right? It would be different. But here, women are looked at as inferior because the things that we value are all things that are associated with men. And again, whether they're true or not is another story. There's often a lack of humility that results from limited knowledge of the minoritized group. A great example of this is Americans, because Americans are kind of, in a way, they're the dominant country on the planet, right? And again, they're being challenged a little bit by China, by India, by Russia in some cases, at least politically anyway. But for a long time, they've been the dominant country on the planet, right? They've had the wealth, they've had the military, they've had the cultural reach, right? They've been the dominant group. Do you think they know anything about other countries? No, they don't. They don't know. They'll talk a lot about Afghanistan, but I bet you they can't point it out on a map. I forget who said it. I think it was a Canadian politician who said at one point, the Americans don't know what street Canada is on. So, yeah. And again, it's true. They don't know anything about what's going on up here. They think we're all it's all mousse and maple syrup up here, and that's all they know. But that's the thing, is that because as a member of the dominant group, in a more global sense, they don't really need to know about anyone else, and they don't care, and they're happy in their ignorance, right? They're not embarrassed that they don't know anything about their next door neighbor, Canada. They're just like, aha, Canada. And then they're fine with it, right? So again, dominant groups often, don't know a lot about the minoritized groups, and they don't really feel bad about that fact. And again, invisibility, right? The fact that your privilege in being part of a dominant group is often invisible. You don't feel it, you don't perceive it, okay? Right, so based on these things, we often see people acting out internalized oppression or internalized dominance, okay? And so when people, this has to do with, you remember the Jane Elliott experiment with the kids and the blue-eyed and the brown-eyed kids? In a way, this is what was going on, okay? So the brown-eyed kids were told they were smarter and more intelligent and better behaved than the blue-eyed kids, and so they started acting out this internalized dominance. They felt they were better, so they started behaving that way, right? Whereas the blue-eyed kids were told they were not as smart and not as well-behaved, and they started acting out an internalized oppression, right? They had internalized messages that they weren't as good, and then they started behaving in a way that was in alignment with those ideas. And again, it's weird because those messages don't really benefit the blue-eyed kids, but they still acted it out, right? So, yeah, so internalized dominance comes from people acting out those social messages of superiority. And again, they don't often, sometimes, but in many cases, people don't really realize that they're doing it, right? And a perfect example of that was Nastra, where you mentioned that someone complimented you on your English speaking ability. Oh gosh, you speak such good English, right? And yeah, and you roll your eyes because why would you not, right? But again, there's a message of superiority, right? I speak English and I'm very good at it, and oh, you were able to do that too? That's so nice, right? It's patronizing, right? It's insulting because the underlying thing is that somehow it must be more of a challenge for you to speak English. Although I will say that for those of you who have had to learn English, I apologize. English is a mess. None of the rules make sense and they only apply half the time. Nothing is spelled the way it sounds. We don't write the way we speak, and it's a dumpster fire of a language. I deeply apologize. It's like having someone come over to your house and it's like a total mess, and you're like, oh God, I'm so sorry, it's a disaster in here. That's how I feel about English, is I'm so sorry, it's a disaster. The language makes no sense whatsoever. It's just like stuck together from a bunch of other things, and so I'm for those of you who have had to learn it as a second or third language, I'm very sorry. It's horrific. It's a huge mess. But anyway, so sometimes people express their dominance through what we would call microaggressions. Okay, micro being small, aggressive being aggressive, but they're tiny, right? And often they don't even seem like hurtful comments. And again, Nasra, that compliment towards your English speaking ability on the surface is a compliment, right? They're trying to say, hey, you're doing great, good job, right? So that's kind of what makes these things difficult to deal with and slippery, because they seem like a compliment, but the underlying message is that, I speak English and, so do you, but somehow it must have been so hard for you, right? Somehow you are less than me, right? Which of course is not true. But that's kind of how these things come up, right? And so, yeah, other good examples of microaggressions are, what are you anyway, right? So if you're not an easily identifiable race, people may ask, what are you, right? And again, what's the kind of underlying message there?
You're not like us.
You what?
You're not like us.
You're not like us. You're different. You don't look like us. Tell me what you are so I know what box to put you in, right? Yeah, that's what it is. And again, it's a tricky one because there can be it could be innocent on the surface, right? People might actually be interested in, where are you from? What is your background? People may be honestly curious, but they also might be kind of expressing this dominance, right? You're different. You're not one of us. What are you anyway, right? Nobody ever asks me what I am. My ancestors could be from all kinds of different countries, but nobody ever asks me. But people who don't look like me in Canada, people of color, they get asked, right? Particularly, again, if their appearance isn't such that they don't seem to fit perfectly into one sort of racial stereotype or another, people will ask.
I have an issue.
Sure.
Why did you choose the word what instead of who?
I chose the word what. Actually, I didn't choose it. I copied it from a book. But I think what's happening here is they're asking what in terms of what is your race, what is your ethnicity. So not so much who are you as a person, but what is your background. That's why what.
You see, they don't even care who you are as a person.
Right. But actually, yeah, and that's actually a good point too. Is that to ask it that way is kind of rude, right? So it does imply that you're asking not about who, but about your background. But it's like, what are you? So it's like you're a thing, right? You're not a human. You're an object of some sort, right? So yeah, it's depending on, like, that's where the what comes from. But phrased this way, it's rude, right? Right?
Some other person would say that.
Well, and turn it around, or not turn it around, but sort of rephrase this, and maybe it's not a multicultural person, but what if it's a gender non-binary person? What if it's a person who doesn't identify as either man or woman?
They're referred to as they, them.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, there's different pronouns, but yes, but could you imagine asking that person, what are you anyway? Hugely offensive, right? So, yeah, again, that's not even a microaggression. That's almost like full on, right? Here, telling a person of color, oh, I don't see you as black. What's the problem with that one?
Implying that being black is inferior.
Yeah, in a way, right? Why would we not want to see someone as the color that they are?
All the stereotypes associated with being black.
Okay, so there's a bunch of stereotypes associated with that, and we might not want to. We might be saying, "Oh, I don't see you through those stereotypes." Okay, which is actually
Like not in a
that's
good
okay.
way, in a bad way.
In a bad way?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see you as black, like because obviously, like people see black people as like violent, aggressive, like not the best human.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't see you as black. Like you're not like the other black people who are like rude and steal.
Oh, yes. So the stereotype. So you're almost saying this, or the person who would say such a thing is almost saying that the stereotype is true, but you're not like that. Right? So yeah, so that's kind of offensive too, right? Because you're confirming all of these negative things. You're saying, oh yeah, those are true, but you're not like that. What else is what's the other problem with this one?
Because stereotypes like in the movies, black people accent are different, but when I think black people accent like, yo, what up, you know?
Yeah, there's kind of this sort of
Yeah,
gangster hip hop kind of stereotypical language culture kind of thing happening often in movies, right, with black Americans. And so but that's weird too, right? Because if you go to someone and you say, oh, I don't see you that way, in one way it's like, okay, you don't fit an obvious stereotype that exists in movies. Not that there aren't bits of truth to that, depending on where you go in the United States and who you talk to. But what would it mean to say, so Daniel, you're Iranian, right? Oh, it's okay. I don't see you as Iranian. It's okay. How's that feel? Not good? Why? But it doesn't feel right, does it? It feels weird, right? So what is actually wrong with being Iranian? Nothing, right? And so again, for me to say that it's okay, I don't see you that way, is almost like it would be a bad thing for you to be Iranian, which it's not. And second, I'm kind of discounting a piece of your identity, right? Part of who you are is where you come from and your culture, yes? Yeah, and I'm saying, oh, but it's okay. I don't see that, right? And particularly, maybe not so much for Iranians, but for people who are in a minoritized group and who suffer within society, what does it feel like for me to say, oh, well, I don't see you that way. I don't see that. I don't see how you struggle. I don't see how your experience is different from mine. I don't see how the privileges I have, some of those you don't have either. It's okay, I don't see all that. I just see you, right? And so that's not great either, right? It's good to see people as uniquely as who they are for people, but to kind of discount the social groups they belong to means that I'm not accepting part of your identity, and I don't see, or I refuse to see, how that identity affects your life, right? So again, it's a bit of a microaggression, right? And again, on the surface, you see what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to say I see you as a person, as a whole person, right? They're trying to say that, and which is good, but sometimes there can be underlying things mixed in, right? Negative messaging. And that's why I point out the computer virus thing, because sometimes people say these things really with the best intentions, right? But people on the other end, people on the receiving end are just like, what do you mean by that, right? And again, the English-speaking comment is a perfect example. Do you think, Nasra, when that person said that to you, do you think they were being nice? Do you think they it had intended to be nice?
I mean, they thought they were being nice.
They thought they were being nice.
Yeah.
It didn't land that way,
Yeah.
but they thought they were saying something nice, right?
Also, I didn't be like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, thanks, and like walked away.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of you sort of you let it go, right? Which we'll talk about as well. But yeah, so that's why these microaggressions are so tricky, and that's why knowing about socialization is important, because that person, and probably many other people who sort of commit these little microaggressions, probably don't mean to, right? They're probably trying to be nice, but because they've absorbed these social messages, it comes out wrong, or the messages below the surface are problematic, right? And so, but again, for the person in the dominant group, they don't see that. White person said this? Yeah. White person says, oh, your English is so good. And they don't see the problem with it, right? Because their privilege is invisible to them, and they haven't sort of looked at the social messaging they've absorbed, and they think they're saying something nice, right? But for Nasra, it lands totally different, right? It's like, okay, but why should that be such a big deal that I speak English? I speak English quite well, it's not a thing. Why are you complimenting me specifically, right? Because I look different from you, right? And therefore, I must not be able to speak English as well.
I have an issue.
Sure.
So, is this microaggression unavoidable?
Sometimes, yeah. And what I'm going to get to, we only have a minute left, and so I'll answer your question and then I'll end it. But where we want to get to in this is the idea that, yeah, sometimes you're going to say things wrong, right? Sometimes you're going to, sometimes you're going to commit a microaggression, right? Because again, you've absorbed certain social messages, and sometimes things just don't come out right. Particularly because everything that comes out of our mouth, we don't scrutinize for hours, right? We just talk and things come out. And sometimes things come out in a wrong way or a hurtful way. Sometimes people perceive things differently than we intended. Again, with Nasra, that person, did not mean to upset you or hurt your feelings, but sometimes that happens. And so we have to be open to the fact that we might do this by accident. And we also have to be open to the fact that other people might do it too, right? And, again, the person that spoke to you might have been a total jerk, but probably more likely is that they just didn't quite realize what they were saying, and they didn't realize how you would perceive it, right? And so, part of this is an education piece, right? So I would never say this to you, right? I would never say such a thing, unless maybe we were in an ESL class and you turned in a good assignment and I was like, your English is so good. But that's a different thing, right? So part of it is education and learning so that we can avoid these things. But the other part is knowing that, it's going to happen in the process. We're going to mess up, things that we intend to say will be perceived differently, and we just have to be open to talking it out.
Also, like on the receiving end.
Good morning, Columbia College. Happy Thursday. Today is February 4th. This is Erlina speaking. And
1 minute.
Here are your morning announcements. February is Black History Month, and we have online events happening every week this month.
There's
This
history and there's
February.
black history.
Today we have the first event called
History
Making a
is the
Mark in
default,
History.
so we don't
It
call
is
it
all
white
about
history.
Black
Black
history in
history is
Canada,
something
the first
different.
markers,
It's the
and
other.
role models. It will be happening on the
There you go.
virtual student lounge in Teams at 12 p.m. today. And all students are automatically added to
perfect
the
example.
student lounge, so you should have access to it. If you want to join, you will see the meeting start at 12, and if you don't have class, then hit join to participate. Our next Black History Month event is next Friday with an Intro to Racial Justice workshop
Ooh.
led by the founder of Black Lives Matter Vancouver,
Oh.
Cicely Blaine. And this
Oh,
workshop
Cicely.
will talk all about skills
She's really
to
nice.
speak up and combat racism
We
in
had
our
Cicely
community.
here a
If
few
you wanna
terms
learn
ago.
more, make
She's
sure
cool.
you check my a great Thursday.
Okay, thanks, Erlinda. Yeah, we have to be open to having that conversation, right? And that's kind of the important thing here. Yeah, also, perfect example of the dominant group dictating what's normal and not normal. There's no such thing as white history, it's just history. Black history is the other, right? It's something different, yes. Although I do think it's a good initiative because often black people and black history is left out of regular history. So, you know, we do need to pay specific attention to it in the process of integrating those stories into that broader historical narrative. Anyway, that's all I'll say because we're over time. Thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion. We had some good points. Have a nice afternoon, and I'll see you tomorrow or in 15 minutes.
Somehow everyone in the world is celebrating Lunar New Year.
Somehow everyone.